Hello everyone, Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel here with a special Monday edition of the Jeet Kune Dialogues. We are going to attempt to connect with Sifu Guru Guy Chase once again today, and let's get everything pulled up here, including my notes on his life. Right. Thanks for those of you who are tuning in. Like I'm forced to say just about every time that we do this now, you want to just hang on until I get our guest online with us, and then we can get this show on the road, as they say. Hi Johnny. Who else is here? Sandy Norton, Johnny Real. Let's see, who else is here? Calvert Strawn. Wow, I haven't seen you in a while. What's happening? So today, the dialogue is with Guy Chase. Hopefully he remembered that we were supposed to go on at 3, and he'll show up. There's my good friend Russell. Let's see who else. Russell's going to be, we haven't set up a date yet, but Russell is a Jeet Kune guy out of Russell, where are you? Indiana, I think, and he's gonna be one of my guests on the Jeet Kune Dialogues in the weeks ahead. Robert Zabo is on here also. All right, so we'll just give Sifu Guy some time to get here. Hopefully, I won't have to preempt this one also, and you know, then do it on my own and get back to you guys at a later date. Hang on one second. Let me just make sure. Okay. Jose Sampaio, welcome. Let's see who else is on here. All right. Well, I thank all of you for checking in for this episode of the dialogues. Let's just see if I can raise Mr. Chase. All right. Well, while I have you guys with me and we're waiting for Guy Chase, on Wednesday, this edition of the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast, we're going to do something a little bit different. I am going to probably include audio excerpts from, it's a 1982, so you guys will get the preview of all this. It's a 1982 documentary called The Way of the Warrior. Had like 12 episodes. It was produced by the BBC. This actually dates back to the era when I started with Dan and Asano. So we're going to do kind of a video review. Well, not even a video review because I'm not going to be playing the video for you guys, but I might play different audio clips. Sifu Dan was one of only a couple of individuals on this 12, 14, 15 part documentary to appear twice. He appeared in the segment on Filipino Eskrima, and then he appeared also on the segment with the segment they call Kung Fu, right? So obviously he was doing the JKD segment. So here's another person who's going to be featured in the dialogue series in the upcoming weeks, Tim Beshara. I'm going to have to learn to pronounce his name correctly by the time he becomes my guest on the dialogues. All right. Okay. So, like I said, we're waiting for Guy Chase to show up and come online and on board with us, and then we'll have dialogue with him. So until until he gets here, I'm just filling in time, trying to update you guys on things that are happening between the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcasts and the Jeet Kune Do dialogues. So guy assured me last week that he knows how to do all the connecting stuff because his wife showed him how to do it. So I was going to give him some grief over that when he gets here, but now I'm starting to think that we might not be able to pull this one off either. In any case, what's another update I can give you? Mark Stewart, who's another one that I've been trying literally and figuratively to connect with. Mark, as you guys know, is in Thailand. So I've been trying to connect with him, and there's always some kind of technological snafu. His internet goes down, but Mark lives, as I like to say, on the beach in Thailand. So that's to be expected, I guess. But he will be... we're not going to be able to do that one live. He and I have to do that off camera, and then I post that one for you. Kevin Siemens on here. Hello, Kevin. And my new friend I assume Dulip is in India, but I'm not sure of that. So yeah, we're still waiting on Guy Chase to show up. In let's see, Friday, this upcoming Friday, the normal time for the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, I'm honored to have Andy Kimura. He should be my guest on Friday's episode of the... Hey Kevin, on Friday's episode of the Jeet Kune Do dialogue. So that's going to be some insightful history into the world of Jeet Kune Do. So that's about all the time I can I can fill in here, waiting for Mr. Chase to show up. But you know, sometimes these guys forget what we agreed on, and guy's a busy guy. Keith Allen out of Rhode Island. Oh yeah, I think Keith and we ran into each other when Sifu Dan did the seminar up in Rhode Island for geez, I forget. Hey Georgie, I think this is Georgie from Connecticut, who used to be my student when he lived here in Miami. Nar Babao. You guys might not be familiar with that name, but this is Nar Babao Jr., who was yeah, Kevin, I know that he's alive and well. I spoke to him on Friday. So Nar Babao is a guy whose dad was of huge influence on Sifu Nasano back in the day. Right, Greg Horton seminar. Thank you, Mr. Allen. That's it. All right. Okay. Well, as much fun as this is, we're coming up on. Okay, I think that's him. Hang on a second, guys. Oh, Victor, I can only wish. I can only wish. We'll see what happens. All right, says that Mr. Chase is here, so we're trying to bring him online, and then we will get cracking. Thanks for hanging out with me all this time, guys. All right, come on, technology, do your thing. You good?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay. All right. So I was telling everybody before you got here that this should work because your wife showed you how to do this.
Yeah, the technology, you need the younger generation to show you what to do or you're screwed.
Well, this is this is what I got to ask you, because my image of you has not changed at all. I think you probably don't even remember that you did a seminar. You did a Penjac Silat seminar for me here in Miami. I can't
I
remember what year it was, so I'm sure you don't remember. But this idea of you being married is completely foreign.
I hear you. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I think we all say, "What did I do?" Right? No, I mean, I have two lovely boys. Really, I have two great kids, and I know it's it happens when you get older, but I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, especially when you see your kids grow up and stuff like that, it's hilarious. But
Well, this is the thing that this is one of the things that I've noticed with all of you older guys in the JKD clan, that things changed somewhat when you guys became like normal human beings. So there was a time when you were like we talked about on Friday when we first tried to do this, right?
yeah,
Your martial arts biography and geography were all over the place.
yeah,
Thailand, California,
true,
Florida, Massachusetts, right? But now you're like a normal individual
yeah,
who's right, who's
yeah,
married, has kids, and
yeah,
now you've got two schools and you travel around. So what my point is that it seems that when you guys grew up, you became a little bit more a little bit more responsible, let's say.
yeah. Yeah, well, Kyle Gotch always told me, he goes, because I lived like a nomad for the longest time of my life. I lived on cots and mats and I
Right.
traveled all over and I did it just to study. So, I really sacrificed a lot. I worked. I don't think a lot of people realize that I worked full time as well. That's how I got to pay for my martial art private lessons and bills, which was extraordinary, even in the 80s and 90s.
Mhm.
So, I had a really good position in my work, so I could afford it, and I had a really good, I really loved my work. So my work, I mean, my work, I used to be into the historical renovation field, and it was a very good business and field for me. I have a passion for renovating the old homes back to their, original form. So, I
Okay.
mean, a lot of people don't realize that, that's what I did for the longest time to supply my income, and I did very well in the field. In fact, I bought 3 or 4 homes, and I have 3 or 4 homes that I bought. You could probably see in the background. This house is
Yeah.
1865 or post and beam. So
Right.
it's a side passion other than the martial arts. I think you should have a side passion other than the passion that you do full time, because it relieves sort of like some type of pressure. But I've always liked that field, and so I always did well in it. So that's how I began. But Kyle Gotch always told me, he goes, you always want a home to lay your head. Don't don't live like a nomad all the time. And so I remember him clearly say that. But it's really hard because if you go from like Cal, I lived with down with Guru de Inosano for several years, and just to study for down there in Venice, and then then I lived with Kyle Goss for another 3 years down there in Florida. Then, I had an opportunity to be with Ben Lagusa for several years and Lopez. So I had to move up to San Francisco. So it's a really hard thing to sacrifice that much of your life, I mean. But of course, when you get kids, you can't really do that. You know what I mean? That now that becomes not really an option,
But I
you know.
guarantee what you have no regrets over that nomadic lifestyle.
No, I don't. I don't. I don't have any, because I'll tell you, but I look back now, and that's really a really rare thing to have studied under those type of men. I mean, Herman Swander on a private lesson, on that long period of time for, I was with Herman for 5 years,
Yeah.
and, Carl Gotch, I was with him for 3 straight years, in Tampa, Florida. Well, Clearwater, he lived up in there in above Clearwater. So, and Ben Lagusa, Ben Lagusa, for crying out loud. I mean, Yeah, this is the funniest story about this, if I can just elaborate a little bit. So if anybody's ever listening. So, I mean, I remember being at the Innocano Academy on Glencoe Ave in that little garage on Glencoe Ave, that tiny little warehouse, you know. And I'd be in the, and this was sort of like the later part of the 80s, early 90s. This is when Yuri first came over and he couldn't speak a bit of English. And I was in the office because I used to teach, you know, when Salam would go on or something, I would be, I'm part of the academy staff, so I would fill in and teach. And I'm in the office, that tiny little office, and I'm reading these books that Yuri brought over, right, about cow gotch. And these books are like stating all these, like, this man could do this and this man. And I'm like, man, who is this guy? Like, this guy is out of a damn comic book, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, you know how the Japanese think everything's like a dynamic superhero to them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Their comment, you know, everything in their stories. And I'm like, nah, that's just the book saying all that stuff to make it. But long and behold, you know, and the same thing, like seeing Lagoosa's photo on, you know, the Inosana wall being like, you know, and then have, you know, like Guru Ted or Lucky talk about how Lagoosa moved, and you can't really visualize it because you're like, oh, you know, well, you know, because you never met him, so how do you visualize somebody moving like that, right? And then years later, karma would have it, is I met him. And not only did I meet with him, I studied, you know, full time with him. So it's a weird thing, because when that came about, I knew it was, you know, you have to stay on this journey, because this is what your road is meant to do. I mean, you just can't make that story up, you know? Yeah. So yeah, years later, so I became, you know, lived with Kyle, and no, I didn't live with him. I lived off the premises, you know what I mean? I lived in a warehouse, believe it or not, down where he lives. So yeah, pretty funny.
I got to ask you something, because back in the 90s, there were a couple of people I know personally who freaked out over Penjak Silat. And a couple of them literally moved from one state to California in order to get closer to Penjak Silat. What, in your opinion, was the obsession that developed around that art 27 years ago?
That's a great question. I'll tell you, I mean, Eddie Jaffe was around, but, you know, I mean, because he got deported and stuff like that. And there was always, and I'm going to be very, you know, truthful in what I say, because that's what type of person I am. So I hope I don't ruffle any feathers. But, you know, back then you saw like a lot of the Butcher Kandagara stuff. You saw, you know, the Kali Silat, which, you know, Guru Dan was doing with the, you know, the half Filipino style, half Indonesian. And then of course you saw the Tatois, you know, which was probably the biggest impact. Rudy Tillman was around, but that, I'll tell you, when Herman came on board, that's when I think people really started seeing, like, what is it? Because that's what the first thing I said. I remember first time I seen Herman Swana perform in what was I think I was at Mark Stewart's old school in the Valley, actually. Now that I think of it, I mean, we're going back, holy Toledo. Ted Lakai, Ted Wong, I mean, there was a gang of us there. Yeah. And I remember seeing him perform for the first time, and I was like, what the hell did I just see? Like, it was so dynamically different. It looked like somebody had just exploded inside and struck somebody and took him down in a jujitsu fashion. And nobody, you know, and then he would immediately stick a carabit in his hand and just, you know, do the exact same thing and just stop, you know, showing how to cut people up at the same time. So I think what happened was, in my opinion, we saw sort of the stand-up stuff, the Sapus, the Bizettes, and the entries and the sweeping of that fashion. And it was good. But then once we saw this man move, it just became dynamic. I mean, and I'll tell everyone, I'm telling you, because I've asked him a million times. I remember one time asking him, and this is when I was really deep with him in a couple of years into it. And, and I said, you know, what are we going to learn today? He goes, I don't know. And I was in his car. We were driving to the hardware store. I'll never forget this. And I go, what do you mean, Ron? He goes, I don't know until you swing at me. And he really did. If you watch him move, that's how his whole premises was built. Right. He was the JKD of Silat, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of opinions about who's who, but he was sort of like he sort of he studied, you know, he had, I think, 18 masters that he had studied from on his father, or 16 on his father's side, and then he had studied with another 18 on his. So it was he had a really interesting dynamic of his Mighty Motor style, and it's and it's different than even his brothers and sisters, believe it or not. And that's not to disrespect anyone. He just has that really interesting, personality about him when it came to Sila, on how he moved. And I believe that's what flocked people there, because I even asked, in fact, I asked Bert online, I said, we never saw the Karabit. Nobody have ever really seen the Karabit come out until Herman Swana came out. I mean, right? I mean, everybody, we remember the pocket knives on the side, and then everybody carried the balisons.
Right.
But nobody really saw the Karabit until Herman Swana came out, and I think that's what made it so dynamic. But to me, is how this man would enter and just take you down, and it would look like jujitsu almost. I mean, he would, you'd be tied up in such a weird fashion, and it was so dynamic. So to me, I think that's what drew a lot of people to that, and and we had the Dutoit brothers, but they all had their own individual ways and paths, as and stuff like that. So, to me, he was like, by far he was the best Silat.
Where are the I mean, because they were released on VHS video, but where are the video files of your because you had a 2-part Mande Muda series, didn't you?
I did. I came out with the first I came out with the first Silat series actually back in '92.
Okay.
And then I did Mighty Muda, and I think a few other people were doing like Silat, but I did strictly Mighty Muda, what I learned. I don't really break the arts apart. I just teach them the way I was taught, and I have a lot of material. And then those I still, believe it or not, I have those. I just had those transferred to digital,
right.
believe it or not. And I did a 1 and 2 version, and a lot of people still request those versions. And it's funny because people will see them, they're like, wow, did you take jiu-jitsu? I said, I didn't take 1 ounce of jiu-jitsu. I'm a white belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't have, I got John Sanders in my school, who's a 2nd degree on Carlson Grayson, but I don't have a degree in jiu-jitsu. But as he moved, the way he moved on the ground, it looked like jiu-jitsu. You would end up in Juju Katami position, like armbar with him, and omoplata position, because it was his way of locking on the ground.
Yeah.
So I do have those videos. In fact, it's funny that you say that. I have the biggest interview on Kyle Gotch. I think I have over 120 hours of Kyle Gotch. I have the biggest, probably the most biggest Kali videos that anybody's ever had, that nobody's ever seen. I even got Ben Lagusa in 1964 tournament performing Kali for the first time. And believe it or not, it's the first time that the public have ever seen Kali.
That was international.
And there was 7. There was 7 masters that performed, and Ben Lagusa was one of the 7. He was number 6 before Bruce Lee. And I have that on videotape too. Nobody's ever seen that. And I have a lot of stuff on Herman that nobody's seen too, that I'm going to release too. And I waited for the longest time, But a lot of people, I have a lot of that stuff. It was given to me through the years when I was with those guys,
Yeah.
And so I do. But the biggest, hardest thing to have it be done is transferring all those. Hundreds of videos stuff. Yeah. I even showed Guru Dan one time. I said, look what the Villa Builder gave me a box, and it had dust on it. It looked like the lost ark underground. There was dust all over it. And long and behold, Guru Dan was in those videos from like the 60s. He goes, wow. It goes, I didn't even see no since the 60s. Where'd you get them? I was like, you'll never believe it.
Yeah.
So
let me ask, because maybe you can verify this. So at the 1964 internationals, there were 2 people with the same initials that Dan and Asano decided to train under, Ben Lagusa and Bruce Lee.
Yep. That's true. And a lot of people don't, and you'll find this even interestingly attached to this. So interestingly enough, Hollywood wanted Ben Lagusa to be Kato, because he was training Ed Parker in the backyard. And that's why Kempo Karate has the round symbol today with the sort of like bullseye in it. That's Ben Lagusa's symbol. And I verified that with Guru Dan back in March. I had to verify a bunch of things because I'm writing a lot of stuff now. And so I said, you know, is that Ben Lagoose's? He goes, that's Ben Lagoose's influence. And that was Ben Lagoose's idea to put that in. He goes, because he was teaching Ed Parker in the backyard. In fact, he wanted Ben Lagoose to be his first black belt, but he couldn't because he had paid homage by the Filipino Rite to Flo Villabrillo. So he was teaching Ed Parker in the backyard, and that's how that round cross symbol, because that's the angles of the collie. So that's true. So in 1964, Guru Dan had trained with, was training with Lagoosa and training with Bruce Lee. And I'm going to tell, I will tell you this. I've seen a lot of men in my life. I've trained with a lot of men. And I would say the fastest man I ever saw in my life was Guru Dan. I never seen anybody move that fast. But I'm telling you, Ben Lagoosa looked like Fred Astaire with a stick in his hand. Tap dancing. I never saw anything move in that fashion, to move, with rhythmic form, the foot and head. And I saw a little bit of that move in Ted Lakai when I studied with Guru Ted. I was like, why does Guru Ted look so different than Guru Dan?
Yeah.
And it's that because that body mechanic of him shifting the hips and the stick hitting low and high. When I saw Ben Lagoosa, I was like, oh my God, it looked like, it was. Now I had figured out how that came from. Then I have a photo that Guru Dan, Richard Bustillo, Ted Lakai, Lucky Lakai, Bauer, all those guys were trained under Ben Lagoosa, from the late 60s. In fact, they got blood ceremonied into the group, I think, in 1974, all of them. There's a photo of them together. I think I posted that too. So, he moves with such rhythmic, dynamic. I never see it. It's just unbelievable how fast Ben Lagoosa moves with his feet and stick in rhythmic form. It's an awe. It makes you an awe because you can't believe somebody can move like that, So that's
so. I want to pick up on something you said a few minutes ago, that Herman Suwanda was the Bruce Lee of Pendrac Silat, and that he said, I don't know what I'm going to teach today until you swing at me.
Yeah.
Now, so you can't use that aspect. You can't use that approach and run in your school, can you?
No. No. And funny thing is, it's funny, is Guru Ted used to teach the same thing. He would, write his notes on the back of a shoebox, for crying out loud. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, it's not, nothing. It's not any false information. No, you can't. You can't. And it's funny, but when I wrote sort of like the manual for the Mighty Muda back then, because there was only 7 people at that time that it was certified. It was me, Guru Dan, Simu Pala, Rini Saunders, Jeff Chong, Ernie from Irvine, Ernie, I can't remember his last name, but there was only several of us. So when I went to write the manual on it, I was like, how am I going to write this manual? Because he really never organized things until much later on in time. Yeah. In fact, I had him. So when I lived in Northern California, I had a school in San Rafael. I had him have, he did a seminar at the school, which I have on film. So I was like, and he has all these jurors, right? All these, you stand in rows and face each other and you have these hand jurors, right? And he's got 101 of them. Now we only had 18.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you got me? Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
We good? Oh, we good? We good? So I had said at the time, I said, we don't have any, I said, and it looked like hand trapping drills. I said, I never learned this, And he goes, guy, he says, I can't throw you around like I used to throw you. He goes, I can't teach like I used to teach you. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, so if I throw people around like I threw you around, nobody's going to come to my seminars. And he was serious. He was dead serious. And I looked at him and I was like, how am I going to learn all these 101 moves? You know what I mean? Like all these jurors, they look like confused in hand motions to me. Yeah. And he goes, no, you don't have to look. He says, you're the early Silat. He says, that's the Mighty Modi. And he told me, he goes, It's funny because he goes, you didn't pick Money Muda. Money Muda picked you. He goes, that's the early stuff. He goes, we can't show that to the public. He says, nobody will come to my seminars. And I thought that was flipping hilarious. You know what I mean? But the reality is that when I teach, I can't teach on that level neither, because how are you going to, wind somebody's arm up behind them and throw them? I mean, I'm willing to take the punishment. And I think at that time in martial arts, we were willing to take sort of like that route. We live in a different time now. I mean, if you tie somebody's arm up, and if they hurt a finger, you're held reliable, so you can't teach it on that level.
But what do we do then? What do we do?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So this is a very interesting question that you asked, because one of my closest students, Mark Delagrati, who's well known in the UFC and the MMA world, we talk about this all the time, and he talks about the older generation, the new generation. I mean, what do we do? So do we become the cookie cutter school, which we're not? Guys like you, Dwayne, guys like me, and we're jaded and breaded on a whole different sort of like platform and tier that we got thrown around. We felt it. And we live in, how do you do that in today's world? You can't, there's no way you can do that. There's just no way. So, I think that the best solution is you have to show like one portion of a technique, which frustrates people like me and you, because we just want to show exactly how we got taught, what we know.
Right.
But then people just look at us like, are you crazy? Like, we're going to do that? Like, what? You know what I mean? It's too dynamic almost in a lot of ways, Even a fighter, funny, and I've trained a lot of MMA fighters. Even a fighter, if you train them something even a little bit more, then they're almost like, they look like primitive cavemen, like fight. It's just so weird. And you would think they would be really highly advanced, but they're not, because they have to learn technique just to fight into the ring. They can't learn the ins and outs of the sensitivity and everything. So I remember one time I went down to Mox, and I was training a UFC fighter, and I was like, take off your gloves, and he was like, take off my gloves? What do you mean? I was like, you wrap your hands and you put your gloves on every time you train. You cut down your sensitivity with your hands by 50% doing that. He never thought. He goes, wow, I just never thought about that way. I said, can you imagine, like, touching like hot water or cold water with like an insulated glove on? How do you become more sensitive to it? And he was like, geez, I never really thought about it on that basis. I said, take your gloves off, so you become more sensitive sometimes. Don't just train with your gloves on and you feel like you got these clubs in your hand, So it's interesting how, how do we do that? I mean, we figure out the best ways to, to try to make that happen,
What do you think it says, or does it say anything is there a generational difference between people from our era and the people that are coming up today, in terms of like whatever we were taught, we took it all on, as opposed to, no, I got to get it cookie cuttered, and it has to be, it has to be sequential, and it's got to make sense and whatever. We didn't care.
Right. Well, I tell you, I think, I mean, Guru Dan says that the newer generation is more evolved and better, and because they have better equipment and stuff like that. And they may be in some which ways, but the missing link, I'll tell you, the missing link a lot is the whole value, meaning they may get some portions physically, but they don't get the sensitivity. They may get the ranges, but they don't get the tools. So, if sometimes if you look at somebody do Jeet Kune, or they're kicking with their shins, and I've had people come to school and they do, Jeet Kune or side kick, and I'm like, how you're Thai boxing? You're not. That's not a JKD kick. Bruce Lee didn't kick with his shin when he kicked with his foot. And so they're like, no, but this is what I said. Nobody corrected your range. So what I think what happens is it's like a supply and demand. Like there's so much demand for that knowledge that there's very few people to spread it on the level that we were taught it. So how do we teach the inner dynamics? How do we teach sensitivity? How do we teach range? How do we teach, footwork? How do we teach to properly execute side kicks, which we don't really even see that much side kicks because it's a really hard tool to throw. So how do we, how do we execute all that and then teach all that at the same time? The time value is not what it is used to be. That's why people like pulling convenience stores. Like, I need the gas, I need the drink, and I need the power bar, and I gotta go. You know what I mean? And the training's becoming like that. I need the technique, I need the movement, and I gotta get out of here. We gotta get rolling. You know what I mean? So what happens to guys like me and you is that we're almost, built on that, like from ground up, and then we have all this knowledge and all this composed levels and tiers that we want them to know. Then we come to realize, like, my God, these kids, they've not spent their lifetime studying. I mean, they've only spent a very few years, in seminars, like get a couple days here and get a couple days here, and that's okay. And it's especially if you can get that, but they don't get the whole dynamic of it, And the sacrifice today is, I mean, look, I'm a parent, so nobody out there is going to argue with me about the new millenniums, because I know I can't even get one of my sons to drive a riding lawnmower to cut the lawn, never mind a push one, so that the dynamic of the new age is not like what it was. Like, we were hungry to get it. The new age, you almost have to force feed them to get it, so there's going to be a whole dynamic difference. I mean, I see older guys at 50 move, and I'm like, that's how you should move, and that's how you move it, and that being said, it's just because they have the range, they have the footwork, they have the sensitivity, they have the tools to engage. That's what we got. That's what we were taught, and I think the newer generation, I hope they can get that intricacy of it, because it's really, really, really super important. That's why if you read the Tao, Bruce Lee was very in debt about how he was trying to express Jeet Kune. You know what I mean? It's studying the kick was just a kick when he studied it, but he realized it wasn't just a kick once he got into it and studied it. And then it became just a kick after he was using it. So, you have to learn it, and then you have to constantly train it, and then you constantly apply it. And I don't know if that's happening today. And remember too, quite frankly, as big as the MMA is, and as big as it is part of the martial art world, and it's really made a huge impact, it's also a double-edged sword. So, what's the double-edged sword? Well, the impact is it's made the martial art world so big, right? And it's helped us all in that sense. And it's kind of put things on the line. What wouldn't work, what happened, what works in the ring, what doesn't work in the ring, all the, the pros and cons. But, the other end of the sword is that, a kid that's fighting at 22 years old definitely ain't got the same knowledge of a guy that's been, at 30 years old, that's been studying, all of his life. So, a 22-year-old kid that may be a champion, he's not the same value as sometimes, as a 30 to 35-year-old guy, 40 or 45, 50-year-old that's been studying martial arts all of his life. He knows, the older one knows the ins and outs of that dynamics and the sensitivities and all the knowledge and stuff. A young person doesn't have that knowledge yet. How do they have that knowledge? It's like a 5-year-old having the knowledge of an adult. He hasn't paid his dues yet, so he doesn't have the knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So I have not asked you any questions from my whole list of notes here. All right.
Well, you got to stop.
I'm
from Boston. I'm a fast.
I really have. No. Wonderful. So here's something I got to ask you. How tall are you?
6 foot.
Okay.
6 foot.
It's funny. So here's
me and Brandon used to stand next to each other. He had the long, lanky arms. I think we're the same birthday, or the same age. I think we're a month in between. And we used to joke a lot because he's from California, but he went to school. He went to school in Emerson in Boston, so he always loved my Boston accent, Right. But it was funny because I looked at him and I'm like, Brandon, you look like an alien, man. You got long arms, you're lanky, and and he goes, and he would look at me, he goes, man, you just keep talking because I love that Boston accent, But I am 6 foot and 189, 90 pounds until I was with Kyle Gotch. Then I went up to 228.
Okay, because my perception of you is that you're tall and languid. That's the adjective I'll use. right? So
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you speed things up and people realize how fast you are?
That changes things real rapidly, real rapidly, real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that changes real. That thing's change. That thing changes. That changes the game real fast. You know, real. But I'll tell you.
That
You know what's funny? I'll tell you that is contribute to the people I've studied under for sure. Because yeah, you know, to be big and tall and be able to move fast is not easy at all. You know, you really
right.
gotta have all dynamics in place for sure, because it doesn't, you know, you, I'll tell you, Kyle Gotch was a fanatic with his own body weight, a fanatic. Like his exercises and his development of his style he always used his own body weight. And, you know, he had a 25-inch neck. The man had a 25-inch neck, and he became 5 pounds. He almost broke the world record in a squat. I think he was 5 pounds short in England. And I have the photo, the copy. He wanted to give me the original, but he couldn't find it in the closet. And he never lifted a weight. He never lifted weights. If that just goes to show you, he never lifted weights. He almost broke the world record in a squat in like 1955. He was so I trained that way and I still train that way. I train that way, you know, even today. And I apply that obviously to, you know, the arts. And so, but it does change things real quick, because people don't expect people to move that, you know, quickly. And same thing with a stick. When I get a stick in my hand, you know, I'm very rhythmic with a stick in my hand, and Ben Lagusa taught me, you know, and Mel Lopez taught me how to move dynamically like that with a stick in rhythm, you know, for sure. So it does
When
change
people
things.
right. When people come to your schools nowadays, what are they looking for?
Well, let me see. That's an interesting question. What are they looking for? I'll tell you, I think most people today just look for being active, right? Being like, you know, active fitness, martial arts. And that's because of the explosion of the MMA. The individuals will come in and look for Jeet Kune, look for Penjok Silat, look for Kali. You know, on that scale. That's what people have done their homework a little bit. You know what I mean? So the people that have sort of like dug underneath the sheets in the attic say, oh, I really want to learn this style or this art, Jeet Kune. I want to learn Penjok Silat. Like, what is, you know, when people start digging a little bit underneath the layers of iron, then I get sort of like those individuals that are fascinated more like into the, you know, the layers of it. On a general, people just like to come in and keep it. And that's because of the explosion of the MMA, you know, it's because of the explosion of the fitness world. It's because of the explosion of, you know, the box exercise and all that. So in general, I get that. On a worldwide basis, I get people that just want to learn, you know, what did Herman Swana teach you? What did Kyle Gotch teach you? What did, you know, Guted, or what did, you know, Ben Lagu? I mean, you know, so, I mean, because they dig a little bit, you know. But on a fundamental, I mean, people even come into school and be like, wow, I didn't know you actually tied in lineage with Bruce Lee or Herman Swan. You know, it's weird, but I have the photos on the wall. And so I think when they see it, they're like, wow, I think I saw them, like, you know, then you have to explain it even more. But for the most part, I think it's like that. In fact, you know, we had this conversation not too long ago, and I was talking to Salam one time, and we were eating dinner, and he came out and he goes, you know, Guy, and I was like, Salam, nobody, I'm built for, I love Savate. I'm a professor in Savate. I'm an initiator, and I'm a silver glove and a bronze glove from the Federation of France. I'm Salam Alessi to Fred Bulletin, to I've had a couple of Savate teachers. And I said, the problem with the Savate is a beautiful system. I mean, I kick in Savate more than I kick it doing Thai. And I've been going to Thailand for 10 years, several years. So, and I do more Savate. I'm more of a Savateur. My body moves more like a Savateur. And although Thai boxing is the most famous class in our place, because people don't want to put on the shoes and put on, you know, those long. I told them, the reason why Sabat didn't take off is because the fashion statement. Nobody wants to look like a ballet-ish, you know, with the shoes and the pants on, the long pants, and everybody wants to tie shorts and kick with a shin and be tough. I said, we never had the image, so it never took off. You know what I mean? Although Bruce Lee was definitely a savate kicker. It wasn't a tie kicker. It was definitely a savate kicker. You can see it, you know. So he thought that was funny. I said, we should have tried to change the form, the uniform. You know what I mean? But he got a kick out of it. But it's true, like, you know, like Thai boxing is probably one of the most popular classes, you know, or, you know, maybe you like the collie does too, you know, the stick. But you know, the intricacy of.
You mentioned,
go ahead.
You know, and it's on your website too, in the biography, being a classmate of Brandon Lee's. Physically, you remind me of another guy also who's become quite famous, Chad Stahelski.
Well,
you know?
Yeah, well, Chad, yeah. It's funny because Chad is another classmate of mine, right? So Chad, and I'll tell you how me and Chad were close, because Chad's from Boston. Chad's actually from Belmont, Mass. Yeah, he's from, so me and him. So when I moved out to the academy, there's only certain people that talk like this. You know what I mean? You can't get a voice. You can't imitate a voice like this. So I remember when I first, like, I arrived in 84, 85, I can't remember, 845. And actually so when I moved out there, Chad was, I think Chad was out there. Yeah, Chad was out there at the same time I was. I think he had been there like 85, and, you know, and he had sort of like, he didn't have the same accent as I have, but I knew he was. I said, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "Oh, my dad drives a Harley." And he goes, "Oh, you're not from California." I said, "Where are you from?" He goes, "Oh, I'm from Massachusetts." I said, "Oh, you're from Weston." You know what I mean? He's definitely a Boston boy. He's a Boston boy. He's outside of Boston, Belmont, Mass. And so from that point on, we get along great. I said, "Well, we're definitely the only Bostonians out here for sure," you know. But yeah, he was. It's funny because at the time they were doing him and Damon were going down to do movies and stuff like that. And Paula said, "Hey, guy, you know, you should go down with them and see if you can get into the movie business. And you know, you got the look, the height, and everything." And I just, you know, to be honest with you, I just wasn't interested. Look, I you know, at the age of 22 years old, I was making $50,000 a year doing historical renovation. I worked on multi-million-dollar homes in Hermosa Beach. I was making plenty of money, you know what I mean? And I was doing well. The only part I wasn't doing well was I was living in Venice on 6th and Broadway, what they call Ghost Town, and Guru Dan would send people over there, students, to see if I was okay, because I had no idea that I lived in Gangtown, you know what I mean? But I didn't really have, you know, you know, I'm from the East Coast, so I'm a grinder, I'm a worker. So I had no patience. I'm like, oh, I got to go down to Hollywood and stand in line, and you know, in my nature too, especially back then, is very shy. I wasn't like, look at me, you know, I'm not that type of person, you know what I mean? So I didn't really, it probably wouldn't have, you know, fit in anyway. So, but I liked what I did. I mean, you know, I loved, you know, historical renovation and doing what I did. And I had great jobs. I didn't have any complaints whatsoever. So, but those guys did well. Those, you know, and Chad, he's doing with all the genres. I mean, those guys are doing great now. You know, it's TV money. Now I look back and I'm like, damn, what was I thinking? I should have went. I should have went down, you know, but. You know, you make choices, and hey, you know, some are lucky and some are not. So what can you do?
You could have spent 3 years in Australia with Keanu Reeves, huh?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. I know. Yeah. I know. I know.
So on your bio, it lists, you know, that you've trained in judo, in kempo, you trained in classical Chinese kung fu, but I want to ask you about the Japanese tea ceremony.
Yeah. So
did you need to get into stuff like that because you had temper control issues?
No. So it's funny because when I lived in Yeah, when I lived in San Francisco, I had a school in San Rafael, and then I had a small school on 4th Street, Japantown. And then I really always, so you know, in San Francisco, when I worked for a historical renovation company, and it was a dream job. I mean, I was making 6 figures, believe it or not, and I was working on the most extraordinary homes pretty much in the United States. And I really admired Japanese furniture, the way it was made, and the dynamics of how it was made. So I was in a Japanese furniture place one night walking, and I had always read like the Book of the Five Rings, and the concept of the samurai was always to, and I'm not a samurai, but one of the concepts training was that a samurai would have to either do calligraphy, writing, or woodworking, or tea ceremony besides killing. That was sort of like, and so I had walked behind this furniture store and way in the back, and I was just looking at furniture, and there was a small Japanese woman on the floor on a mat just doing this thing with this kettle and tea, you know, and she couldn't even speak English. So I was just taken from it. I was like, what are they doing? You know what I mean? I didn't even know like what. And I sat there and watched it, and it was so common to see somebody do this tea ceremony like this, you know. And this woman, you know, that was 85 at the time, couldn't speak a bit of English. I was fascinated by it. And, you know, her daughter-in-law goes, hey, you know, would you like to come to our house and learn, you know, a little bit about tea? And I was like, oh my God, I after tasting tea, I'll tell you, it was like having 5 shots of espresso. Like, it was just like, whoa, what is this stuff? So that's how I got involved. And I'll tell you, that was my only female teacher, and she was like Yoda. That woman taught me more about things I can't even, it's hard to even describe tea ceremony. I'm 2nd degree tea ceremony, by the way. I studied for 7 straight years privately. The same time I did with Ben Lagusa, and I became 2nd degree. And I can tell you this, that if anybody knows anything about tea ceremony, they'll tell you that it's very formal, it's very strict, and it's very Zen-like to perform it. And I can just express to anyone, what I got out of it is when I would go to her house and learn tea ceremony, I would leave, it felt like time just slowed still. Like things looked like they were in slow motion. Like it just takes time, and it takes everything and slows it down to minimum. And tea ceremony teaches you that, to live by the minimal, you know, way, but yet be very natural. And so it teaches you a lot of that, you know, dynamicsy and what is called, you know, Zen philosophy. That's what it was built on. It was built by Zen monks.
What is its connection then to martial art philosophy?
Well, funny enough, if you can sort of like visualize, you know, you doing this tea ceremony and not saying anything, you don't really say anything to the guests. You just perform all these maneuvers and these strict motions and serve the best bowl of tea, which only has 3 sips in it, by the way, to your guest, right? And so what it is, and it's an expression of yourself that you're serving to your guests. But if, as a guest, if you watch a tea ceremony teacher or master, as they say, right, or sensei, that to watch them move is flawless. They move in these flawless motions and serve you the best cup of tea. So for me, the connection was, and I think I was the only martial artist out of that, you know, many people that were her students. But for me, the connection was to sort of like connect this philosophy of understanding how, you know, tea ceremony, you know, the minimal movement combines into martial arts. And yet, you know, simplicity, how does it combine in the martial arts? Because as simple as tea is, it's very complex. And as very simple as martial art is, it's very complex. And it just, to me, had such a correlation, of connection. And it just felt natural. It would be like, you know, the same thing if somebody, you know, like you know, what I used to do for work, and somebody like, guy, you know, can you take off that corner post and remove that whole part of the house, and we refinish it with mahogany, and we do, I'll be like, no problem, watch this, I'll cut, you know what I mean? It's very natural for me. So I don't have that fear of it. And it just, once I started understanding it, making the connection, it really made a huge impact in my martial art world, for sure. It made a huge impact. but it's very formal and it's very, very hard to study because you have to sit in Sanchin position, that kneeling position, for a long time. Your legs will become numb at those times. You know, in the
Oh
beginning,
my
when I
God.
couldn't walk, you couldn't. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
they make you. It's supposed to be. You know, it's a very formal way of sitting, and your back has to be arched, and you can't look at people. Your head has to be formal, straight, and
Wow.
it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. Very, very. One of my greatest teachers. She just passed away at 102, 103, I think, 102,
Wow.
103.
Oh
So
my God.
extremely, extremely educated. You know, my life in the martial art world. Such a huge connection between tea and martial arts.
So as you were describing that, I had an image of Ben Largusa in slow motion. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That's a connection
Yeah.
that I made.
Funny you say that. Funny you say that. It's funny you say that because he moves very, very extremely smooth and in rhythmic motion. So what does that mean? Ben Lagusa moves like the wind, and that stick is hitting you on your feet, on your head, and on your hand, what we call the rhythm triangle, in sequence, not in that order. It can be your head, foot, hand. It could be your hand, foot, head. It can be in any one of those three, you know, hits. But he moves it in such a combination form. He looks like he almost moves in water. It doesn't even look like he moves like in fast, you know, in real time. When you, at least when I, you know, did tea ceremony. And then what I would do, funny enough, that when you said that, is I would actually slow tapes down because I took a lot of film of Ben, you know, Grandmaster Ben in the garage when I was training with him. And when you slow him down, it just looks like he's in water moving. He's so smooth. It's unbelievable how really smooth he really is. And T, you know, made me sort of like connect with that at the time. Okay. Because I'll tell you, I got really frustrated when I learned that style. Yeah, I went back to Guru Dan, and I remember because of course I went to Guru Dan years ago, and I go down and visit Guru Dan in LA, and I was like, I can't learn this style. Like, there's no way. There's no way I'm gonna get this. And I was like, I said they criticize me and they dog me and they tell me I move like a holly. He goes, and Guru Dan laughs. He goes, nothing's changed. He goes, listen to me. You're gonna learn it. He says, stay with it. And I'll never forget this. And he goes, just like this. He goes, because they teach it very formally. You have to learn like these formal steps. It almost looks like, you know, square dancing almost, you know. But he goes, listen. He goes, people on the left side will throw rocks at you if you walk on the right. And he says, and if you walk on the left side, people on the right side will throw rocks at you. Yeah. He says, I always taught you to walk down the middle of the road. He said, it's the most dangerous place to walk. He said, but to walk down that road. I thought that was hilarious. I said, you know, it's funny because as a student, you go back in with frustration, you ask him a question like that, and he just comes back with something like that, and you can't argue. You're like, he's right, you know? Yeah. But I stuck it out, and then I became, you know, really, really efficient at it, and it took quite a while. But you know, now I'm a professor in that system. Now I'm a ranked professor.
So here's the thing, right? So here's the thing. I listened to you, I learned more about you, and I realized that we could like cut you up into pieces and have. No, seriously. Wait, let me finish my idea. We could cut you into pieces and have the complete package for Boxe Française Savate. We could have the complete package for Mande Buddha. We could have the complete package for Karl Gotch system. We could have the complete package, right, for Villabril Largusa Kali. So let me try to put you on the spot. If you could only do one of them for the rest of your life, which one would you choose?
What would I do? So that's a common question. That question's more common than any. Okay. That's fun. That question's probably the most common question I get asked. you know. But this is funny. This is real. How do I say this? So I teach like on two parts. I teach the systems A to Z. So if somebody goes, I want to learn Kali, I want to learn the availability of Kali, I say, well, this is what it takes to learn that from A to Z. That's how I like to teach, actually. I like to teach the system from A to Z.
Okay.
And then there's times that I only can teach, you know, B, E, and Q, because they're, you know, they're let's say a fighter, or they're you know, somebody that maybe wants that information, or they come into class and that we're training, you know, in class time, and I have to sort of like break, you know, part A and part Q and Z and R or Q to, you know, whatever together. So, and I don't have the time frame with them. So, you know, that's but I like to teach from A to Z, because it forces the student to know the system well dynamically, which makes them grow at the end better, much better, because they don't, you know, they learn the pluses and the minuses and the multiplications and stuff, and by doing that, you really get an overall dynamic of the system. So for me, what I can't, because what my teachers, Carl Gotch, Ben Lagusa, Den DeSanto, Ted Lakai, Lucky Lakai, they were very close to me. You know, they were very, or I was very close to them. I could, you know, I was, you know, in relation. So it's hard for me to sort of like, you know, that pick and choose. I don't have really a favorite, you know. I can tell you that sometimes I have a boredom. You know, sometimes I'll get bored in one, and I will like, oh, I like, you know, I want to change in the other, or something like that. But I don't have really a favorite, because I don't really look at the systems as a system. I look at the systems as a personality, because they were my teachers. And believe it or not, like, you know, they became like father figures. You know, when I went to California, Inosano was like my father. He was the only, you know, he was the only guy that I had around that was like, okay, you know, I moved out here for him. I went from a state where there was like, I don't even know, 900,000, 1 million, to a city that was God knows how many, you know what I mean? So a lot of these teachers were more like, you know, were teacher figures, but they become more almost like your family figures, you know. And so after a while, you don't even look at it as a system. You're like, oh, this is how their system is, or that's how they move, and that's how, you know, their life is. And so it's strange enough that to say that I don't really even look at it as sometimes even as a system. I look at it as a personality, you know. And that's why I don't really have a favorite. You know, because when I was involved, even, you know, going to Thailand and training with the most famous Thai boxers, they can't even speak a bit of English, you know. Then we hug and we go eat, and I'm like, man, these guys are great. These guys are killers. And you shake their hand, and it's like a marshmallow. You know what I mean? And they're so they're so soft spoken. You know, these guys are 120 fights in a ring. And it's funny because you don't think of them as that way. All of a sudden, they become like your friends. You know what I mean? So to me, I didn't really have a favorite, but I'll tell you, sometimes that becomes a good thing, because it's like wiping your palate off, like tasting wine. If you taste a really good wine, you wipe your palate off to taste the next, so you can sort of like gather all the, you know, elements of the complexity of it, you know. And that's really how I kind of look at that. So
when you're talking about favorites, and you mentioned you know, having read the Book of Five Rings and what have you, do you have a list of favorite books? Like if I ask you what your favorite books are, like.
Yeah, I do. So I love the Book of Tea. If anybody can ever read the Book of Tea, you don't have to know tea ceremony to read the Book of Tea, which is a great book, and it talks about the elements of tea ceremony. I think people will get a lot out of it. It's almost like the Book of the Five Rings. It talks about, you know, because in tea ceremony, there's flower arrangements and tea ceremony, and they talk about how Americans, we take flowers, we put them on the table, and then after we're done with them, we just throw them out. Right. But how Japanese will take one flower and they express it, and yet when they you know, when they're done with that flower, they bury it. It's a whole different, so it gives it sort of like a different depth. And it's a very short book, and it was written by a guy that came to Harvard University from Japan and actually educated people on tea. You know, the Tao is of course, the Tao of the Jeet Kune is always like a Bible of, you know, of essence and stuff like that. And you know, that's a good one. The you know, I like I have a whole bunch up there. I have a lot of old ones like I think the Great Men's Strength or something like that. It talks about all the early strong men and how they trained and how they ate and how they, you know, I love that whole. I mean, if you talk about like people like Carl's, you know, era, like Matrix, who was one of Karl Gottsch's influence. A guy named Maxit from Germany, who they said he was going to die when he was a kid, and he became so developed and became one of the world's strongest men. George Hacker's, a lot of these older men didn't have GNCs around and all this, and they were so strong, and they broke world record in strength. So I have a lot of old books like that are really rare that I really like, because there's a lot of information in them. You know, there's a real lot of information in them. I have a whole library up there.
Yeah.
That's quite expensive.
What is the value for you in your life of old things? Because your vocation, let's say, is restoration. So what's the value of the old for you?
So you know what's funny? So I mean, I live in old homes, as you can see behind me. I don't know if people can see, like, you can see this old, like, you know, post and beam, like 1865, which 1965 is a new house. So these are 1865. I have another one that I rent up, and it's funny because, so for my son's birthday, what I bought him was, if people can relate this, and I'll post it. I bought him a 1965 all chrome Spider bike, 3-speed. With the banana seat, all original, that was in a barn for like 49 years. And I brought it to the bike shop just to sort of like make sure it was okay. And the people at the bike shop said everybody wanted that bike. He said I had to bring it out back. So, and I you know, that, and I, you know, I have old parlor stoves that I restore. That I don't know, to me, the value of old things is that they just stay around for a long time, and they just become more valuable. You know, that's what's crazy. I mean, you know, whether you're talking about these homes or whether you're talking about like that 1965, you know, all chrome Spider bike, which, you know, with a banana seat and the 8 handlebars stuff, it's so great. I said I might not even give this to you. I may have it, you know. But it's just such a solid piece, and it never goes away, it seems. And although the style may go, people still just love it, you know. People just they can't be but drawn to it, you know. So I you know, I don't, it's like wisdom. It's like the old wisdom of these teachers. It's like you're so drawn to it. It's just, you know, I mean, I was telling, I think I was just telling Eric Paulson, you know, me and Eric were talking at Rutgers University, and you know, and we talked about Karl Gotch, how he, you know, and he has a picture signed by Karl Gotch, one of the last pictures, and you know, and he knows I lived with Karl for 3 years, and he knows so he's asking me this question. I said, Eric, a lot of people don't even realize Karl Gotch got thrown in the concentration camps 2 times.
Wow.
In his 2 times, and he's German, you know what I mean? And Hitler signed Mein Kampf, the book, for him. And he brought it back to his father, who was in the First War, and his father ripped it up and threw it in the fireplace. You know what I mean? I mean, and he, you know, and Karl Gotch escaped from the concentration camps twice, and his friends were shot right in front of him and was assassinated, but they didn't assassinate him because he was supposed to be one of the icons of Germany, and he was supposed to, but he refused. So he got thrown in a concentration camp. You know, so those guys have got so much character. It's just, you can't be but not drawn to it, you know. It's just, it's unbelievable. Like, I drink wine today, and I drink, you know, really good wine, and I knew nothing about wine. How did I know about wine? Karl Gotch made me drink a glass of wine after every day of training, and I was like, I don't wine, like, wow, it's like vinegar to me. I don't want, you know what I mean? What? It's like, no, you're gonna drink the wine. It's good for your blood after. It rejuvenates your red blood cells, and I was just like, what is it? And I, you know, in the beginning, and it's just, and he mandatory, whether you liked it or not. So you have to clean off your palate, you know what I mean, to sort of like get in, you know, to be one with these guys a little bit. So And he did. He made me drink. He made me drink a glass of red wine at 3 o'clock. Right after training, 3 o'clock. Glass of red wine from the Rhine Valley comes out, and you know. So and then that's how I got introduced.
When
to
I are
wine,
done.
you know? What's that?
I might do that when you and I are done.
I definitely will do it. Trust me. I like wine.
Okay, so let's do for the people who are on here. So there are two locations of Guy Chase academies, correct?
There is.
One in New Haven.
No. One is in Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And the second one is in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Right. Okay. So now for people who weren't here on Friday, tell them how close together those are.
Yeah. So if you're not from New England, you this will be a shock to you, but you can drive from Maine to New Hampshire to Massachusetts within 20 minutes. You can hit all 3 states within 25 minutes, which, by the way, ironically, each state has a different law. So, right. So for an example, in New Hampshire, you can't buy liquor unless it's from the state liquor store that's run by the state, but you can carry a gun underneath your concealed without any permit. Funny enough, if you go to Massachusetts and do it, you'll be arrested immediately and thrown in jail for a year. You know what I mean? So there's just all these, you know, we live in these tiny little states up here that are kind of like Europe. They all sort of like, you know, got the individual laws, and they all got their individual, you know, accents too, as long with it. So I have a school in Massachusetts, in Newburyport, Massachusetts, which is almost border. Well, it is kind of border to the New Hampshire. And then I have one in New Hampshire as well. And both of my schools are in probably the most prestigious historical towns, believe it or not, in the seacoast. So if you walk through those towns, it will look like you're way back in the 1600s of England, because they're all brick and they're all historical and stuff. So we have two locations in those. So I can bounce between both within 15 minutes. And that's the only way I can do it. So, but as I get older, I don't know, who knows, you know?
Yeah. Do those 3 states all have borders with Canada?
No. Maine and Vermont are border with Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the best place to find out more about you is I forget the domain name. Is it Guy Chase?
Yeah, just Guy Chase Academy. Guy Chase. It's really in the Guy Chase Academy of Martial Arts. That's what I've always had it as.
Okay.
That's what I always had it. I always have it as. Yeah.
All right. Well, look.
So it's pretty funny.
I don't want to take up any more of your Monday afternoon. This was quite a pleasure, right? But I still have a ton of questions, so we're gonna have to do a second one of these at least.
Oh, cool. Anything, Blake. Anything.
Much, man.
Anything. And certainly let me tell everybody out there too, and this is not rubbing elbows, but you know, really, Dwight's been around a long time around these arts and around these people, and it's really great that he does stuff like this and brings sort of like these old school guys together, because you ain't gonna get any. This is how the younger generation can find out, like, you know, what is, what's not, how is, what's not, and it's great that somebody like yourself, you know, does this, because it really you know, inspires the younger generation coming up, and it certainly brings us old school guys together. You know what I mean? And really,
I mean, you gave us great details about the legacy of all the people that you've trained with, but what you might not be aware of is that you have a legacy also. So I'm trying to do my part to keep the Jeet Kune Do legacy going, and you know, it's such a pleasure for me to talk to guys like you and be able to share it with the rest of the Jeet Kune Do world. So I really appreciate your taking the time out. We'll do it again.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care, man.
All right, you too, brother. I'll see you later.
Okay. All right, everyone. That's it. Episode number 14 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues with Guy Chase. We'll see you again next time. Take care.